Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 625, 625. December the 4th, 2018, Tuesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, we are continuing to cover the events that are unfolding in France. And again, it's just day by day getting worse. It is getting worse. Macron is down in the low 20s now in approval. He is saying that he is not going to reverse his policy, which is what set all this into motion. They are preparing to, if they haven't already declared a state of emergency. It appears now that many in the police forces and the fire forces are now siding with the rioters or protesters, however you want to characterize them. And there was supposed to be a meeting today between the Yellow Vests, which is this name that's been given to a lot of these groups of protesters, certainly seem to represent the majority of the people protesting. Supposed to be a meeting between them and some officials of the Macron government today, but that meeting has now been canceled. So it looks like Macron is heading, he was, I guess, in other places in Europe, the EU or whatever, Belgium, somewhere. He's now come back to France. He got back yesterday. It appears he's having meetings with his ministers, and it is now being suggested. This is what's being reported, my friends. I'm not making this up. It's now being suggested that they may have no other choice because the police are now essentially siding with the protesters, that they may have to use the military, and even suggesting that they may start using live ammunition, not rubber bullets. Yes, you can see the videotape of many people with bloodied faces, very large bruises on other parts of their body where they've been hit with these rubber bullets. I've never been hit with a rubber bullet, but I can assume that I've been hit with rock salt, but I can assume that probably hurts and absolutely would draw blood and would probably leave a hell of a bruise, even if they're rubber bullets. So it appears from the little bit of research that I did last night, that I had some time as far as when Macron could actually be removed. It appears that the first opportunity to do so through the normal parliamentary process would be sometime in late 2020. I don't think he's got till late 2020. Not based on the video evidence I'm seeing, not based on the news reports that are coming out. And this report came from RT. Now, I'm not sure, RT can go either way. But they do have, a couple reporters on the ground there, and they're saying their sources are telling them that this meeting that Macron is in with his cabinet ministers, they're actually discussing whether or not they'll have to break out the military and whether or not they may be forced to use real ammunition to repel and put down the riots, because now it started as protests and it turned to riots. It's getting much worse. It's getting much larger, and at this point, if the police are now turning and siding with the protesters, that means that Macron literally now and the French government have no control over what is happening now. They have lost control of the situation, which means they may have no choice. The way these socialists are, I mean, they're nimrods. They're not. You got to remember this. These people are not very smart. A lot of people think, oh, okay, well, these government people, they got these, advanced degrees from, Ivy League schools and stuff. They must be really smart. No, they're just very privileged and very corrupt. They are placed into positions of power. They didn't earn anything. Macron couldn't run your corner drugstore. They have unemployment of about 10.9%. They have inflation. They have a bad debt problem. They have an economy that's growing at 0.02%. The previous quarter, 0.04%. So they have a sluggish, almost shrinking economy. High taxes. High unemployment. The economic conditions there are pretty miserable for the average French person. As I told you yesterday, about 35% of the French population is currently living at the poverty rate. And what does Macron do? For relief, he lops on a massive fuel tax. Now these people can't even afford to drive back and forth to work to earn their poverty level incomes. How angry would you be? And let's keep in mind, we're talking basic economics here, which a socialist would not understand. But you who watch this channel would understand. When you raise the price of fuel, what happens? The price of everything else goes up. All commodities. Why? Because the products that are delivered to the stores for people to buy are delivered largely by truck, which use fuel. So that means it costs more to move the goods. Therefore, you have to raise the price of the goods to justify the cost. It's like when we had gas here in the U.S. and it was getting around over $3 a gallon. We actually, where I work, they actually had to come up with a way to raise prices, and they essentially called it, I forget what the exact term was they used, but it was a term that meant this is not us raising prices. This is us offsetting the high cost of fuel and fixing that into the price of our goods because we have no choice. When you raise prices on fuel, you see prices go up on practically everything. And in an economy that's struggling in France, with that many people living at the poverty level, and you've got gas at over $7 a gallon, I think what we're looking at here is this was the final straw. This is the final straw. And again, it needs to be reported correctly, because I doubt if it's being reported correctly in most of the corporate media. This is not a bunch of right-wing fanatics rising up against, as part of the right-wing movement in Europe, rising up against Macron because of, their political differences. These people protesting in France, sure, there are people who are not supporters of Macron, but the majority of people on the streets are the rank and file. They are not politically motivated. They are motivated by pure anger and frustration at the fact that their government doesn't seem to understand that they're really struggling on a day-to-day basis just to pay their bills, just to put food on the table. They're really struggling. And what happens? Macron comes along and drops this fuel tax, which sends them into orbit. Because these people on the street are smart enough to know, even though Macron isn't, smart enough to know that it's going to cause an increase in everything they have to buy, not just fuel. There are also reports that there are people in the group of protesters chanting, "We want Trump. We want Trump." I mean, they've watched Trump hand Macron his ass time after time after time. Trump's making Macron look like a sissy. He's making him look impotent. Not only that, Trump goes to the G20 and says, well, the carbon taxes and the Paris Accords and all this type of stuff you want to do, I'm just not buying it. I need to see more science. I'm not buying into the total green thing right now. Yeah, I want to protect the environment. I want clean water, clean air, but I need to see more evidence because there's a lot of other scientists that have a different opinion. So Trump's the only one in the entire group of all these people that stands up and says, yeah, well, I'm not so sure I believe all this stuff. Well, guess what? The reason why Macron put these fuel taxes on was because it's part of his plan and the EU plan to force people to give up driving or reduce driving because of the environmental issues. This is all tied to the environmental wacko cause. It's what it's all tied to. And many of these people, French people, probably don't buy into it. Some of them probably do. Maybe many of them do. But probably many of them don't. So what adds insult to injury is that not only are they being taxed to death with these fuel taxes and all the other price increases that will result because of that, it's all being done based on what many people probably believe are a hoax. What they want to see is Macron stand up and agree with Trump and say, I need more evidence. of all this so-called global warming and greenhouse effect and all this stuff. I'm just not so convinced. I need more evidence. And no, I'm not going to raise taxes to pay for this green energy fantasy. I'm not going to raise taxes. It's going to cause increases in prices across the board, and people are already struggling. That's what they expect to hear the president of their country say, but Macron doesn't care about them. They're peons. He's got much larger goals. His goal is to be the next man up at the EU, to step in and fill the shoes of Merkel. I don't think it's going to happen. And if things continue on their present course in the next several days, if they make the decision to put the military on the street and they actually start firing real bullets, my friends, things are going to come unglued and it will spread all across Europe. It won't be kept just within France or Paris. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. We'll keep watching. Yes, we will. Comey is going to be testifying this Friday. Well, we know he's going to have a tough time because the last time he testified to Congress, he told, I think I've counted 6 lies. A couple of them were just gigantic whoppers. Of course, he was asked under oath whether or not he made the decision to exonerate Hillary before or after he finished the investigation, interviewing all the witnesses and looking at all the information. And he quickly responded, after. Despite the fact that we know he wrote the letter exonerating the rotten Reverend Clinton before he interviewed 17 key witnesses. That was a lie. Then, of course, he was asked about when was the last time that he spoke to Obama. And he said that it was around Thanksgiving. He spoke to Obama personally. Then around Christmas time, he sent an email. And he says that that was the last time he communicated with Obama. But then Susan Rice wrote her CYA letter. And in her CYA letter, she recalls a meeting in January, about a week or two, week and a half, actually a week and a half, before Trump was inaugurated. And in that meeting was James Comey. He lied again. He was asked about the dossier. Was the dossier used? He said the dossier was salacious and unverified. And he said that what was actually used to do the investigation was a mosaic. A mosaic. But we now know from the members of Congress who've viewed the first FISA that Comey signed, that it wasn't a mosaic. It was just a dossier. It was the dossier. What he said was a lie. And he knows it. And there's more. So what's he going to do? He's going to lie. So how's Comey, J. Edgar Comey, going to handle the questions thrown at him on Friday? Well, I figure he's got 3 strategies. The first strategy will be to say, as many times as he can, I can't recall or I don't remember. His second strategy will be to say, if it's something he cannot answer without incriminating himself, he'll simply plead the fifth on that question. And what are you saying when you plead the fifth on a question? You're saying, I cannot answer that question because I would incriminate myself. And the third way that he'll handle the questions will be just simply to lie. Because he believes he can lie and it'll be his word against someone else's word. Or he believes he can lie because he doesn't believe the lie can be proven to be a lie. They'll know it's a lie. Everyone will know it's a lie, but it can't actually be proven. So that's what he's going to do. Claim he either A, can't remember, B, plead the fifth, or C, lie. That's what's going to happen on Friday. I don't think they expect to get much out of Comey. They just want to watch his demeanor and watch him twist and spin in the seat when they ask him certain questions. They want to see his... This happens a lot with prosecutors and lawyers and cops. They'll ask you a question and know you're probably not going to answer it honestly. They just want to ask the question because they're going to be looking at your face, your reaction, your body movements, and all these other things that they are trained to understand what those body movements and eye gestures and head movements mean. They just want to see your reaction to the question. We'll tell them everything, because Comey will give them very little. And Loretta Lynch, she's going to be testifying later in the month. She's given nothing. We've already seen her testimony. Her last time she testified, over 100 times, she said, I can't recall. I can't remember. Now, Comey likes to use the, oh, that's classified, so I can't talk about it. But he's not going to be able to do that in a closed-door session. So he's going to have to say either, I can't remember, or I can't recall, or he's going to say, I plead the fifth on that question, or he's just going to lie. That's what you'll get from Comey. It doesn't matter. He's going down, my friends. And he knows it. Uncle Bob the Executioner has got a lot of problems. And I think you know what I mean. Jerome Corsi, Dr. Corsi, his attorney, today filed an ethics complaint against Mueller, Uncle Bob, stating that Uncle Bob the Executioner literally tried to force Corsi into providing false testimony in order to beat the rap. A prosecutor is not allowed to pressure a witness into lying to avoid being prosecuted. You're not allowed to do that. That's serious misconduct. It's criminal misconduct. So Jerome Corsi's attorney has filed that ethics complaint stating exactly that the Mueller team is trying to force him to make a false statement to avoid being indicted. And I think he's explained it on TV. I mean, it's not a secret. He's explained it on TV very clearly, exactly what they wanted him to say and why he won't say it. I think Corsi's got a strong case, but I also believe that when they get him in court, they're going to destroy him character-wise, and I expect that that'll be coming in the days as we move forward. They'll talk about the fact that he wrote the book on Obama's birth certificate, the fact that he's written books on 9/11, the JFK assassination, and various other things. That's how they'll go after him and try to make him out to be a nut, a crazy person, associated with Alex Jones, 9/11 truther, Sandy Hook truther, this truther, birthers, you know, the whole nine. You know the run. So that's exactly how that will be handled. Well, you know, if you want to see the Rotten Reverend Clinton and Slick Willie before they go to prison, you can do that now because they're still out there on the tour. I thought they would have canceled it by now from embarrassment, but it appears they're going to try to trudge forward, and now they've dropped the ticket prices down to $6. $6 from $725 down to $6. That's not good. That is not good. Now, for $6, if they come anywhere near me, I will actually pay the $6 to go in to see the Clintons. Now, I won't have to worry about being there very long because I will start heckling them immediately when they come out. So I'll be escorted out of the room probably within 15 minutes. So I won't have to listen to them for very long. But for $6, I'll heckle the Clintons. You bet your sweet bippy. Here's an interesting story, and I don't know where this falls in with the rest of the crazy things that have been happening in the last week or so. But we have this individual now, Andrei Telizhenko, Telizhenko, T-L-I-Z-H-E-N-K-O. He's Ukrainian. He is now coming out again, pretty much as a whistleblower, and he is stating that in early 2016, Telizhenko says he was approached by the DNC operative Alexandra Chalupa, who currently works for the DNC. Chalupa wanted dirt on the Trump campaign and specifically Manafort. We know that he says, of course, that something we already knew, that the Ukrainian embassy in D.C., the District of Criminals, was working closely with Chalupa. And so Telizhenko is now speaking out about this, and he's prepared to testify and give sworn statements to any congressional committee that wants to hear it, or the Inspector General, or anyone else. Now, If you go to my timeline, my TowerGate timeline, you will see that it's one of the first set of events that started taking place back in 2015 with this operative, DNC operative, Alexandra Chalupa. She worked for the DNC, but she's Ukrainian. So she goes back to Ukraine and starts working for this propaganda organization, which is digging into this Trump-Russia narrative and targeting Paul Manafort. She was back and forth between Ukraine and DNC. She was communicating directly to Senator Magoo's right-hand man, David Kramer, who was also there working for that propaganda organization, back and forth. And this is how they set up that little special committee in the Senate, where they were funneling this information from these Ukrainian assets into this little group within the Democratic Party, which included Senator Magoo. And this is where the basis, the roots of the Trump-Russia narrative was created. You can read it right there in my timeline, all about the activities of Miss Chalupa. There's more to learn about this, and I'm sure in the days to come we will learn more. Mr. Telesenko is a very brave man. He better not go back to Ukraine, wherever he is now. That's not safe. John Huber's testimony has been postponed because the day that they postponed it has now been recognized as a day of mourning for the evil doer, George Herbert Walker Bush, 41, a key player in the Kennedy assassination and many other dirty deeds. So I guess they don't want to have the Huber hearings on a day when, which has been marked for a day of mourning for Bush 41, lying in state on his way to hell. So I guess they'll reschedule Huber. We don't know when. Paul Sperry. Paul Sperry. Whenever we report on something he investigates, it's worth listening to. Paul Sperry now reporting that Uncle Bob, the executioner, and the Hillary donor posse withheld exculpatory evidence from the court that would have exonerated Trump. In other words, he lied to the court. Uncle Bob Mueller knew that Cohen, Michael Cohen, had no direct contacts to the Kremlin, Russia, or Putin. There was no back channel. That blows up the entire Mueller plot, pretty much, or the plot he's trying to unravel on Trump. The whole idea was that Cohen was working as a middleman between Trump and the Russians, and that he had a back channel. But as Sperry points out, Uncle Bob the executioner knew, because of Cohen's testimony and because of 2 emails he obtained from Cohen, that Cohen never had any back channel. And they know this because he did attempt, during that real estate deal, he did attempt to contact people close to Putin, or people around Putin, Putin's people, I guess you would say, and he had no idea even how to contact them. And they know that because both of the emails he sent were sent to a general mailbox. A general mailbox. Cohen had no idea how to contact anybody close to Putin, which is exactly what he said. And Uncle Bob knew it, has known it for a long time. That is exculpatory evidence. It was withheld from the court. That is lying to the court. Uncle Bob, go to jail, you son of a bitch. John Solomon, stating at least 6 deep state operatives infiltrated the Trump campaign before Operation Crossfire Hurricane. Yeah. I haven't gone through my head to count out all 6, but yeah, about 6. Be a pretty good number. And long before Operation Crossfire Hurricane. Operation Crossfire Hurricane began July 31st of 2016. The contacts on Papadopoulos, Flynn, Carter Page, Stone, Caputo, all those contacts happened back in the spring, early beginning in March of 2016 through about June of 2016, at least months before Operation Crossfire Hurricane ever began. They already had so-called informants. They weren't informants. They weren't informants at all. They were brought in to dirty up some people around Trump. Those are called agent provocateurs. Mr. Halper, your ass is going to jail, fat man. Tim Canova is now demanding a recount. He seems to have overwhelming evidence of voter fraud. He said he beat Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz 2 years ago. Now he says he beat her again, and they cheated him again, and he's not putting up with it. And this appears, people are saying this guy's got some good evidence this time, and that he is going to take it to court, and that they might very well have a serious challenge to that race. Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz. Well, she cheated Bernie. Why wouldn't she cheat Tim Canova? You know, when Maureen Dowd at the New York Times throws you under the bus, you know you're done. You know you are roadkill. Roadkill. She wrote this article, which has got a lot of liberals very upset, and I'm sure the Clintons very upset because Maureen Dowd has generally been, a very big supporter of the Clintons. But she writes in this New York Times article that the Clintons are struggling at coming to terms with the passing of their relevance. They are struggling to come to terms with the passing of their relevance. Now keep in mind, it was also Maureen Dowd, who was interviewed after we found out that the Rotten Reverend Clinton paid for the dossier. We found out about that almost exactly 1 year after we learned about the dossier. We learned about the dossier about October of 2016. The Rotten Reverend Clinton denied it, and it wasn't proven that she in fact did pay for it until a year later, in about September of 2017. Now, do you remember the interview and the story that Maureen Dowd wrote after we learned about that? Let me refresh your memory. Apparently, Maureen Dowd said that within days of learning about the dossier, she and many other reporters just assumed, okay, that was probably the Clinton team. But let's just go ahead and verify that. So she's totally connected to the Rotten Reverend and people inside her campaign. And she says that she called and talked to several people within the Clinton campaign, and they all told her they had nothing to do with the dossier. Didn't know anything about the dossier. They just learned about it from Michael Korn or David Korn at Mother Jones. In other words, they lied directly to her face. And she wrote a fairly scathing article and did a couple interviews where she let it be known to the Clinton team, to Hillary Clinton and others who directly lied to her face. She said, I knew a year ago the Clintons paid for that, and I contacted them, people very close to Hillary Clinton, and they lied right to my face. She wasn't very happy. Maybe this is how she gets revenge. Ocasio-Cortez is calling for Trump's impeachment. She's an idiot. We all know there's something brewing, something going on, and it has a lot to do with the Clinton Foundation and what's going on, and I have a whole other theory on that I don't have time to get into now. But something that we speculated on the better part of a year ago is that there's obviously three groups operating behind the scenes here. We obviously have the black hats, the bad guys. We have the white hats, some of those, good guys, and we have the people in the middle. And these people are buried into the deep state, specifically the DOJ, the FBI, probably in the intel community, other agencies of the government. So there's clearly a war going on, and what we see in this last week or two is, I think, removes any doubt that there is a war going on within the bureaucracies, which we affectionately call the deep state, that there's a war going on between the white hats and the black hats, and then there's all those people caught in the middle. And so what I want to talk about now, I just want to preface this, what I'm going to talk about now, with that thought. Keep that in your mind. There's a war going on within the deep state itself. Okay, so getting back to this FBI raid on Mr. Kane, the whistleblower, as we try to sort this out, I now have two theories. One is a logical theory, which a lot of people are suggesting, and another is a not so logical theory, but certainly one that occurs within the deep state apparatus. As I said the other day, it doesn't seem to me, we know that Horowitz and Huber are working together on the very issue of the Clinton Foundation. Mr. Kane was a whistleblower who came forward. The idea that they would order a raid on him is just, I can't believe that. Especially when it was they who granted him, or Horowitz who granted him, whistleblower status. So I'm just not able to swallow that. This is just not working for me. I have one other theory, though. You know, we know that Horowitz received this information, and remember what the information tells us. It tells us that Uncle Bob, the executioner, while acting as the FBI director, failed to prosecute what he knew were crimes having to do with Rosatom and Uranium One and these other things. Now, Horowitz has been looking into this stuff for a very long time. He obviously understands that the Senate Intelligence Committee, specifically Mark Warner and a couple others on that committee, were deeply involved in the coup. Horowitz has to understand all this, right? He has to understand all this, right? He's the one who released all the emails, including the ones between Warner and this lawyer, whose name escapes me for the moment. And remember, this lawyer was the lawyer for Deripaska, Christopher Steele, and Julian Assange. Warner was communicating with him. They were trying to get a deal for Deripaska, and in fact they had one, and even had Baker, the general counsel of the FBI, agree to it, but then when it was taken to Comey, he shot it down. Hard to believe that Huber and Horowitz are behind this. And I've heard the theory that people put out there, well, maybe a lot of times a whistleblower provides information, and then once they look at the information, they say, wow, this is great information, but now we have a few more questions. I wonder if the whistleblower has any more documents that he didn't think are relevant that we could use, or if he has some information in his head that wasn't in document form that he could help us out with. But if that's the case, they just would have called him up, or called his lawyer, or asked him to come back in. They wouldn't have sent out a SWAT raid on him for 6 hours. So that brings us to the final theory. Other than it was some mid-level prosecutor in the DOJ or FBI, would take both, who are white hat, black hat sort of thing, and possibly this was a black hat retaliating against the white hats, part of an internal war going on in the DOJ. That is one possibility. But there's another possibility. What if Uncle Bob, the executioner, very upset about the documents that this whistleblower provided, found out that the documents he provided were copies and not the originals? Well, that would mean that Mr. Kane would have the originals. And maybe Uncle Bob thought, you know what? In court, copies can be heavily scrutinized. They want the originals. And maybe Uncle Bob learned that Mr. Kane provided copies and not originals. So maybe Uncle Bob got with one of his black hats at the DOJ, possibly with Rodenstein involved, and they sent the SWAT team over there to get the documents because they wanted the originals. They wanted the originals. Because if they got the originals, then they're no longer in Mr. Kane's possession. And then all the state has got to work with is the copies, which can be challenged in court. It also allows them to produce their own fake evidence to counter the copies. They can create some evidence of their own. One last possibility that could be going on here is that this could be Horowitz setting up the Senate Intelligence Committee. Remember, he's been investigating this stuff for a long time. He knows the Senate Intelligence Committee is up to their eyeballs working with Mueller. What if Horowitz said, hey, I'm going to set these people up. I'm going to set Warner up. I'm going to give these documents to the House Intel Committee and the Senate Intel Committee, and I'm going to see if Warner leaks these to Mueller or to someone at the DOJ so that they can go after this whistleblower. Is it possible that What that was Huckleberry Horowitz setting up Mark Warner? A lot to consider there, isn't there? Thank you for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you guys. Bye.